Super Rugby AU round number 8. Forgive me if I get a little bit excited about how this week pans out because you've got first and second with the Reds hosting the Brumbies. And then you've got third and fourth. Remember, third spot's the all-important one in terms of getting a kind of playoff spot, even though that seems bizarre in a 5-team competition. But yeah, both of these games are essentially pretty crucial ones. I think if the Brumbies lose this and the Reds, in all likelihood, go on their all-conquering run to finish first, and if the Force win this one, the Rebels are probably assured of that third place spot. I can't see anyone really chasing down second from those two teams. But anyway, we'll go over the two games, the squads, some of the stats, the predictions, and yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on how you think things might end up panning out. The first one is the Rebels and the Force. It's from Melbourne, 7:45 local time this Friday. As I said, the important thing about this one is that third spot. And the Rebels, they really need to bounce back from a pretty disappointing game against the Reds last week. The Reds really took them to the cleaners? Took them to task? I don't know. The Reds gave them a hiding. It wasn't pretty. And it was kind of a test of, are the Rebels at the level of the Reds and the Brumbies? And the answer was a definitive no in that game anyway. Whereas the Force will be looking to show they're at least in that realm of, of that third place team spot. Because they've only beaten the Tars so far, which based on the Tars record is not that impressive either. So yeah, plenty to play for. Add on top of that the kind of bad blood from the axing of the Force years ago. It just means this one overall should be a pretty spicy one. Both teams have made a few changes. Elof, Hansen and Fa'amusili is the front row for the Rebels. Hansen swaps place with Uelese, who is now riding the pine. Leota and Hosea is the second row, so Leota gets a start ahead of Cummins, who is also on the bench. Kemeny Hardwick-Wells, same back row. Powell Tamua, same 9-10 combo. Lewis Holland gets a start at 12. I think that's his first start in Super Rugby AU. Eli is there at 13, and he's been pretty good. It means Hodge moves to fullback, so Pincus drops to the bench. Remember, Hodge can play virtually anywhere in that back line. Korobete and Lomani are the wingers. Lomani was probably the more impressive of the two last week, believe it or not. A converted halfback to play winger, but Korobete has been good in every game he's played this season and great in some. Like I mentioned, Pincus on the bench, Wilkin, Tuttle, Gibbon, Sodoni, and so on. For the Force, they've made a change that I've been looking forward to seeing for the whole season, and I wasn't sure if it was going to happen. That's Domingo Miotti gets a shot at 10. Remember, they've had John O'Lance playing there initially, and then it was guy whose name has just escaped me. I'm having an absolute blank moment. But I think Miotti's off at the end of the season as well, so I thought there's no way the Force are going to bother investing any minutes in him. He gets a start, and I'm pretty excited about that. So Tom Robertson, Kaitu'u, and Medrano are the front row, and they will need to be good. We'll get to the head-to-head stuff shortly, but that may be an area of concern. Thrush and Tamani second row, Lee Warner, Koteka, and Lazana is the back row. As much as I like Lee Warner, I think Koteka has probably been the pick of the bunch for the Lucies from the Force this season, showing a really great work rate, and he's good with ball in hand as well. The midfield is Kyle Goblin, who's back after his pre-season injuries, and he captains the side from 12. Tavita Kurandrani is there at 13. Those guys know each other pretty well. Familiar faces in Ralston on the right wing and McGregor on at fullback, but they've brought in Jordan Olofella from, I think he's playing with Leicester, but he's on loan at the Force this season, and he's actually getting a crack, so we're pleased to see him get a run. He's starting on the left wing. Pryor, Stunder, Macaulay, and Anstey and so on are on the bench. But yeah, it's a good little Argentinian contingent from the Force with the likes of Miotti, Kubeli, Lozano, Medrano all getting a start. So if you're an Argentinian fan, this is your week to be watching the Force, that's for sure. Looking at the head-to-head stuff, one area of concern for the Force is their maybe lack of ability to break the line. Like, look at the clean breaks this season. Remember, the Force are 1-5, 1-4. The Rebels are 2-3, so they've played the same number of games. But clean breaks generated 50 to the Rebels, 24 to the Force. And average gain, so how many meters they get per carry, 4 meters for the Rebels, which is about right. Anything above 4 meters is a bonus. Anything under 4 meters looks low. 2.6 for the Force, so a bit concerning. However, if you look at defenders beaten, the Force actually beat them with 87 to 81. So the Force guys want to go through you, whereas the Rebels are able to generate opportunities to go around you. So just a bit of a different style. But if I was coach of the Force, I'd be looking at that 2.6 meters with a little bit of concern. However, their goal kicking's better, 82% to the Rebels 75. Remember, the Rebels like to take a lot of shots at goal. Both sides' lineouts have been operating really well. Efficiency is high on both sides. Both sides' scrums, not so much. Not so much. So, yeah. I think the Force one has the worst numbers in Super Rugby AU, so they will need to really knuckle down, like I mentioned, at scrum time. But, yeah. The round 4 game, which was the previous one played in Perth, was a low-scoring one. It seems like I've almost virtually blocked it from my entire memory. 10-7 with the Rebels pinching that one. Is that right? I honestly virtually have blanked that from my memory. The bookies have got the Rebels by 9 at home, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm has the Rebels by 9 at home, so a common theme there. But yeah, should be a good game. As I mentioned, the Force will have to be up for this one, and the Rebels will want to bounce back. The next one, and this one's almost like a final. It's got that feeling about it. These two teams seem like the best in AU. I mean, the Reds with 6-0, it's hard to argue with that. They're doing a Crusaders run of their own, but remember, even the Crusaders in Aotearoa have dropped a game. The Reds not so much, and the Brumbies have only dropped one, and guess who? It was to the Reds. That one was back in round 4 as well, and it was 40 points to 38. A very close one. I think I remember that one. Didn't the Reds win that one at the death? Watching too much rugby, man. But it's on at Suncorp, 7:45. Hopefully they get a good crowd to this one. If there's one game that should get a crowd out in Brisbane, this game. This has to be probably the game of the season thus far. Squads for this one: Fotuaika, Paenga-Mosa, and Tupou for the Reds. Paenga-Mosa is still preferred to Mafi. Mafi's adding that bit of impact from the bench. Ryan Smith and Salakai Loto second row. Scott Young, McCrate, and Wilson is the back row. But good news is that Liam Wright is actually back, although he is on the bench. They're going to kind of ease him back into this one. And he's not captain. James O'Connor's still captain. Remember, prior to getting his half-season ending injury, Wright was the captain going into the start of the season. But it's Jock who is captain. He's at 10. McDermott's there at 9. And they've proved a really good combo this year as well. McDermott's really, in the last few weeks, been into the swing of things in terms of testing the opposition defence, because that is the main strength of his game. And if he exploits that and keeps people in two minds, sometimes that gives him the space to generate for others. And sometimes if they take their eyes off him, the space to generate for himself. Stewart and Paisami are also a hell of a combo, with Stewart making 1 million tackles a game and Paisami generally getting up into people's faces on defence. He got a good intercept last week. He's been getting some good go-forward ball. So they're a good kind of tandem combo. Campbell, Pitaya, and Hegarty are the back three. Hegarty's on his 100th game, so congratulations to him. That's a hell of an achievement. Dalguna's on the bench, like I mentioned. Wright, Uru, Fluke, Mafi, and so on. For the Brumbies, they are very fortunate as they go into Brisbane to be boosted by the return of Alan Alatoa, and he's captain. Remember, he was serving a 3-game suspension, so he's back, and that is essential, man. If you're going to go into face this current Brad Thorne side, which just lives on a scrum, you want your top guns available. So Alatoa starts tight head, Slipper moves to loose head, and Fainga is still there at hooker. So the front row battle, the Reds should edge it. Their scrum, despite playing 6 games, is still operating at 100%. Of all the Super Rugby teams, Aotearoa and AU, no one is at 100% except for the Reds. That's how good they are at scrum time. So yeah, the Brumbies will need to be really firing, probably just to be on par with what the Rebels are firing. The Reds are firing. But the Brumbies scrum numbers are also pretty good, in the 90s, so not bad. Swain and Neville are the locks. That means Frost is down to the bench, which is unfortunate because I thought he had a pretty good game last week. But Swain and Neville is that experienced combo. Valtini, Cusack, and Samu. I feel like Valtini probably needs a good game. He was kept pretty quiet last week, and he's a big unit, so he needs to throw himself into things, but he has had a history of injury, so maybe there's a slight hesitancy there. Not sure. Samu's got great hands, so he'll no doubt keep the Reds defenders guessing. White and Lolosio, that's the 19 combo. And again, those are kind of direct competitions for Wallabies spots as well. McDermott against White. Lolosio kind of the inexperienced guy, the youth, the up-and-comer, against the incumbent of James O'Connor. Simone and Ikitau are the midfield, Wright, Muirhead, and Banks, the back three, so it's pretty familiar stuff from what we saw last week. Remember, Wright, on his first game back, was really dangerous, scored one try with only like half a metre space, so they'll have to be very careful with him. Sio is also back on the bench, so that's a great bit of news. He had an elbow injury, I think it was, so he's back, so absolutely essential for that Brumbies scrum to front up. That being said, their line-out has been slightly better than the Reds one. So in terms of the set piece, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Both are pretty good in both departments, scrum and line-out. But the Reds edge at scrum time and the Brumbies edge at line-out time. Tries are 30 to the Rebels. Not the Rebels. The Rebels aren't even playing. 30 to the Brumbies. 28 to the Reds. So pretty tight. Clean breaks 69 for the Reds, 53 for the Brumbies. So the Reds are slightly more cutting in their attack. Turnovers conceded, though, is one area of concern. 84 by the Reds. It's only 61 by the Brumbies. So the Reds are able to cut teams to bits a bit more, but they're also more likely to cough up the pill. I guess that's that kind of risk-reward thing. Also, the Brumbies' defence is slightly better in terms of their overall tackling percentage, 88 to 84. Not a heck of a lot in that, but the difference between 88 and 84 is kind of more like test level to more like Super Rugby level. The bookies have got the Reds by 2, and Rugby Forecast Algorithm has got the Reds by 5. So at home, the Reds will certainly go in as big-time favourites. But yeah, man, it should be a really, really cracking weekend of Super Rugby AU. If you haven't been watching the competition, this is probably a good round to get started. That being said, as I mentioned, the previous game between the Rebels and the Force was a bit of a forgettable one in that I can hardly remember it, but I seem to remember that one was a cracker. Maybe it'll flip on its head this time. We will see. You guys let me know your thoughts. How do you see this one going? And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.